All right, go ahead and recap. Thank you, Ms. Womack.
Yes, Judge. So this was on the court's calendar on February 23rd, 2014. At that time, his probation was revoked, but the court had indicated that you would take sentencing under advisement. At the time, the state's recommendation was 1 year to serve and reinstate. My notes indicate that the court was not satisfied with that recommendation. I believe was considering a lengthier sentence, and did take it under advisement at that time. The petition is for case 11 CR 1137, where the defendant did enter a guilty plea in October of 2011, to 4 counts, 3 of those counts being child molestation, and 1 count of false imprisonment. He did receive a sentence of 20 years to serve 7 years in custody at that time. The current petition alleges 2 violations. The first is that the defendant failed to make regular reports to the adult probation officer as directed, that the defendant failed to report to the DeKalb County office as directed on March 7th of 2023 or any time thereafter. The defendant last reported to the Central DeKalb Probation on March 6, 2023 during a video interaction, at which point the defendant was instructed to meet with his supervising officer at a Bojangles in Stonecrest, Georgia on that date, but the defendant did fail to report at that time or any time thereafter. Unsuccessful telephone contact was made to the defendant on March 17th, 2023, at which time a voicemail was left instructing the defendant to make contact with his supervising officer. The defendant failed to make contact on that date or any time thereafter. And the second allegation is a violation of special condition that the defendant must register with the sex offender registry, that the defendant has failed to register as a sex offender on February 17th, 2023, or any time thereafter, and that his whereabouts were unknown at that time. In looking at the procedural history, Judge, he has had several revocations since the imposition of his sentence. The first revocation was July 9th, 2019, and that was you, Judge. Judge Barrie, you did revoke 6 months for failure to report, failure to pay fines and fees, failure to advise probation officer of current residence, address, or employment, and failure to complete sex offender treatment. The next year, in February 21st of 2020, Judge Piegler, who was sitting on behalf of this court, did revoke probation for 90 days for the subsequent offense of possession of drug-related objects, failure to report, failure to pay fines and fees, failure to complete sex offender treatment, and testing positive for THC and cocaine. He tested positive for those 2 substances on August 15th, 2019 and September 3rd, 2019, and then separately also tested positive for cocaine on September 23rd, 2019. The next revocation was December 5th of 2022, and that was back before this court. You did revoke 6 months to serve for the defendant failing to update his residential address with probation and absconding from probation in Louisiana. So at this time, he has been in custody since January 17th of this year, so for 218 days. The state still has the same recommendation that we did last time we were before the court. That recommendation was 1 year to serve and reinstate. His sentence does not end until August 1st of 2023, or sorry, of 2030.
Okay. Give me 1 second.
Yes, Judge.
All right. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. So just to address these sort of most recent failure to reports. I think the context here is like a bigger picture issue, right? Which is to say that when the last time that Mr. Carter was on reporting in DeKalb County, the DeKalb County probation office was, I believe, on Mills Road, and which is accessible to various forms of public transportation and things of this sort. What happened is that when he got up this time, back in February, there were two issues that are presented. Number one is the registry issue, and the second one is the capacity to report. Do with the registry issue, and the second because it relates to the reporting. What happened is that the probation office has now been moved out to Conyers, right, which presents not as a problem for Mr. Mills, but for a host of people who are in similar situations, which being housing insecure, just general poverty and things of this nature. Mr. Carter at the time didn't have like a cell phone, so even the points of contact that he was using were borrowing other people's phones, going to places like libraries to get on computers, these kinds of things in order to attempt to stay in contact. But the sort of final thing as it relates to being in Conyers is not just that it's in Conyers, but it's in Conyers and then several miles away from the last public transport destination, right? Meaning that you would have to take MARTA, a bus, and then walk, I think it's like 3 or 4 miles in order to get to where the probation office is presently, right? So this is where we get to the situation where he was in contact initially with with probation, and that's why it says in there that he's meant to meet at a Bojangles, right? But again, this is a person that doesn't have a cell phone or GPS or things of that nature. So when he gets to where he believes he's supposed to go, he can't find the Bojangles. He stops at a gas station to ask for directions. But again, oftentimes folks that are just recently released from DeKalb County Jail present in a particular manner. He was trespassed from the property, and then he just goes home without a way to contact the probation officer. Now, this is not to suggest that, like, again, proper steps shouldn't be taken afterwards or what he's supposed to do. It's not to excuse that, but the general initial sort of failure to report and then access to general resources and a capacity to do that, that's the circumstances that led to it. With that, upon his return to DeKalb County, Mr. Carter informs that he went to the DeKalb County Jail to register for the sex offender registry. They told him that because he had just been released, that he needed something from probation. What that was, I'm not sure. But this is what he's saying. So it's that he went there and they said that he needed something from probation in order to register. He couldn't get that because his capacity to meet with probation is limited because of just accessibility. And that sort of throws him into this cycle, right? These are not meant to be presented as like absolute like excuses to say like there are crimes you committed, you're responsible for these things, but it is to paint the picture of like this is how these things sort of come about. And so he's been in custody for almost a year. The recommendation from the state is that he remain for a full a year. We would just ask that it be the revoked time be 12 months and then he'd be allowed to be reinstated at that point, Your Honor.
Yeah, I think according to my notes, that I think the state wanted a year, Mr. Sellers wanted less than that, and the court was not satisfied with either. And that's because he had already been on probation and I'd already given him 6 months, and it seems like it was the same thing, like we can't keep up with him. And we're doing the same thing. And now you mean like 13 years later, we can't keep up with him? Like nothing's working. The additional revocations doesn't seem to be an issue. I mean, you can't get to the Bojangles in Stone Mountain, I mean in Stonecrest, and then thereafter you still can't make contact with anybody. You can't make a phone call to say I couldn't find it. Did he make a phone call to say he couldn't find it? Let me ask probation. All right, who's here on this case?
Officer Footman is on.
Officer Footman. Okay, I need a probation officer to answer.
His officer is Officer Footman. I see that she's on the Zoom, Your Honor. I don't know if Officer Footman, are you there? Because it's a specialized case that she is handling.
Do you have a way of making contact with her? All right, well, we'll come back to that, so we can see if we can get Officer Footman. Who's the supervisor for Officer Footman, so we can make contact with her? And try to figure out what we need to do. Do you know,
It's Assistant Chief Hardigan.
do you have a number that we can call? You can text it to Ms. Davis? Or chat it?
Oh, she says she's on. She just can't get it to unmute. But I do have the number. Would you like me to put it in the chat, Your Honor?
What are you looking at? You're saying she's on?
Yeah, so she texted me and she said that she's on, but she can't get her computer to unmute. I'm sorry, I'm turning my camera on. But I have the number that you are looking for to Assistant Chief Harding is 404.
Okay, you can just chat it to Ms. Davis.
Okay.
Can you ask Officer Footman can she hear us?
Judge, when I call her, would you like for her to just speak through my
Yeah.
speaker?
Yeah,
Okay,
so that's what I was trying to get her number. So
all right.
I think the number is for the supervisor, not the officer that's on.
yeah, I need the supervisor number, but I was also trying to see if she would send us her number as well.
I'm gonna put both numbers in the chat, Your Honor.
Okay. And Ms. Davis, when you get it, if you'll call Officer Footman. Yes.
Yes,
Will we
ma'am.
call Footman or the supervisor?
Call Officer Footman so we can put her through you.
Okay,
Let me see if I can turn my microphone up some. Okay, I'm asking, are you familiar with the case? Dennis Lee Carter, are you familiar with that case? Do you have that file?
I have it pulled up, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did he make contact after, do you recognize that there was a meeting that was supposed to be taking place at Bojangles? It looks like maybe March 7, 2023.
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am, to what?
I don't have anything showing where there was a meeting at Bojangles.
No, there was supposed to be a meeting. What do you show as to the time frame that you were supposed to meet?
The last meeting, was in March of 2023.
Yeah, what were the particulars surrounding that?
So this was a video interaction, that took place, and he was sleeping under a bridge at the time in Fulton County.
Okay, and what was requested? Okay, I'm gonna come back to you. Can you review that file? And then when I come back, maybe you'll be ready to answer those questions. I need to figure out what happened to him. So just review the file. We'll come back to it. All right, gonna move to are you ready to make an announcement on Brandon Clark?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, what's the announcement?
Oh, yes, Your Honor. So the alleged violation is a new case here. And so we would request a reset for this for two reasons. One, we're not sure if we want to have a full hearing on it, but we don't have discovery or any real information about that case. We like to do a little investigation as to the underlying new charge before we move forward on the probation violation. So we would ask for a reset on that, Your Honor.
All right, whose case is this prosecution wise?
This is with ADA Michael Costello. He has already reviewed the new case. It is almost identical to the case that the defendant was acquitted of, 21 CR 2907.
Okay,
The new allegations are almost identical. The recommendation is to revoke the balance or have a full hearing.
okay, so he recognizes that a full hearing might be necessary for that.
Yes, Judge.
Okay, all right, then I will reset it. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
We keep it working like Oouchie the boss. We trying to catch up like we hit us a fault. We gotta win, ain't taking no loss. We in the game.